He can shoot the woman in the head, and people in the United States defend his right to kill her.
You're
We have
talking
had
about 100 police
officers murdered.
I'm talking about thousands of protesters who were protesting peacefully, and for their pains, they have been slaughtered by the government, by your government. I mean, these are people protesting because they can't eat. They can't get on the internet. You're on the internet now. They can't do that. Why shouldn't they?
Folks, the level of depravity, brutality, and horror of the Islamic Republic of Iran, of the Iranian regime, has reached a point where even the usually leftist and pro-Hamas, pro-jihadist media has just had enough of listening to people claim that the Iranian regime is this benign force. So here we have a complete shill of the Islamic Republic trying to defend the horrors that we can all see against a leftist journalist who is finally pushing back. Here we go.
What right does the West have to determine who governs in Iran and who doesn't?
The people on the streets in their thousands who are now being systematically slaughtered in their thousands, they are saying that your government no longer has the right to govern.
Yesterday, we saw rallies across the country, and the footage is online, and it was broadcast live, even though now people like Musk and others are trying to pretend it was AI or
no, these were people who
footage.
were forced to go out and protest, but people of their own free will bravely went out, and in return, the government, your government, has slaughtered them in their thousands. And for what?
There were 2.3 million people in Tehran yesterday on the streets, and reporters from Al Jazeera English, Arabic, RT, CGTN, CCTV, and others, Al Mayadeen, were there, and they witnessed it. How can you force millions of people on the streets in Tehran
because you instill
and other
fear
streets?
into the people of your country. Your government instills fear into the people of your country.
I think that you are living in an alternative universe and you're drowning in your own fake narratives. If you think that the people of Iran support the MEK terror organization or the monarchists that your governments fund and support, I think you really know literally nothing about Iran.
Well, the dozens, or not dozens, hundreds of videos online that we see of masses of people screaming Reza Pahlavi, the monarchy, right, that he mentioned, the Shah, demanding his return. Well, I guess, you know, fantasy. If you're in Press TV, you see this Press TV that he has over there? That's the Iranian government regime media in a dictatorship, where only that is allowed to, you know, wander the streets and report, of course. This is what life in a dictatorship, oppressive dictatorship, is like.
Your government says that 2,000 people are dead. Are you denying that?
Our government never made any statements about any death numbers at all.
And that would be a lie. It's more like 12,000 probably, based on many sources. But 2,000 is the lowest possible count.
You're talking
been
about
reported to Reuters.
Our government does not report to Reuters. And Reuters constantly fabricates information about Iran, and it constantly says unnamed sources.
So the bodies piling up on the streets, that's all AI, that's all fake, is it?
There are no bodies piling up on the streets.
No bodies piling up on the streets. We've seen them with our own eyes.
No, not on the streets. I live in Tehran.
Well, in the morgues,
and by the way, so then rephrase and don't produce propaganda. You're supposed to be a credible news outlet. 100 police officers, roughly, or officers of the law were murdered. 2 were burnt alive. 1 was beheaded. And we had a nurse burnt alive in a clinic. The clinic was burnt down and she was burnt. She was a young nurse. We had a 3-year-old kid who was shot by these rioters, or the people who you call protesters, and murdered in her father's arms. These are violent people.
Let me ask you, 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, 17-year-old Amir Ali Hidari, 28-year-old Naveed Salehi, these people have all been killed for the simple fact that they are demanding freedom and they're using their voices to demand freedom. That's the truth, isn't it?
I don't know the names that you give, and I don't know what happened to these people. I don't know if they exist or not. Just giving names doesn't mean anything.
Well,
But
they're
the
three
fact
among
is that
thousands, and the executions begin tomorrow. And for what? For people wanting to use their voices to demand freedoms, freedoms that you take for granted.
no, the people who will be executed, if they are convicted, are the people who burned people alive and who beheaded others.
What about the over 1,000 people you executed in the last year or so? Right? Back in 2025 until now, after the war with Israel, that you accused them of being collaborators, many of whom were not. They were just opposers of the regime and you executed them. Were they also going around burning people? Or maybe it's just what your brutal government does to suppress people who are trying to resist against what they are being done to right now?
We had 100 police officers murdered or officers of the law. And if one officer in the United States, it is deemed that the car in front of him may not be turning to the right enough, he can shoot the woman in the head, and people in the United States defend his right to kill her.
You're
We have
talking
had
about
100
100 police
officers
officers.
murdered.
I'm talking about thousands of protesters who were protesting peacefully, and for their pains, they have been slaughtered by the government, by your government. I mean, these are people protesting because
No.
they can't eat, they can't live. Inflation is running riot. They can't get on the internet. You're on the internet now. They can't do that. Why shouldn't they?
Well, excuse me, but I'm at a studio. I do not have internet. You know this. You know this, so don't be dishonest. You've been dishonest more than once already. And if we have economic problems, it's because your government and the US government have imposed sanctions on ordinary people. You are trying to strangle ordinary people. No, I'm talking. Excuse me.
No, the
You are
West is
trying to strangle.
responding
I'm
to the
speaking. If
calls from the
you cannot,
protesters who are risking their
you,
lives to go out on the street. That
no,
is why
these are
Donald Trump's
violent
promised to offer
rioters.
help.
Well, you're aligned to Trump, obviously, now, but these are people who were rioting, and these were people who were shooting at police officers, and there's footage of it. And that footage is online, and it's on the accounts of many people, and people can see it. Mainstream media in the West, and obviously your media, since you are trying to create an environment for war and to justify illegal activity on behalf of your regime and the Trump regime, you're, of course, creating a narrative of thousands of peaceful protesters on the streets being slaughtered.
If
The
you don't like
reality is
my
something very
questions,
different. And history,
Professor Morandi, let me put to you what the German Chancellor said. Friedrich Merz said, when a regime can only maintain power through violence, then it is effectively at its end. Do you accept your government is nearing its end? It's in the final days.
first of all, who said that I'm afraid of your questions or I don't like your questions? Second of all, who makes the German Chancellor any more credible than you? The German
Oh, you're credible though. You, Muhammad Morandi, the guy working for the regime for Press TV, is oh so credible. The problem with your narrative of violent protesters who were shot because they were violent is that your regime doesn't have elections or freedom. You can't vote out, I don't know, the supreme leader Khamenei or the government or, express your concerns in a normal manner like you can in democracies. That's the problem with your entire comparison that you're making here, Mr. Morandi, shill for the Islamic Republic.
Chancellor also said when the Israeli regime, the genocidal Israeli regime, bombed Iran while Iran was negotiating with the United States, he said, the Israelis do our dirty work for us. And this is the same German regime that gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons to use against us.
Well,
I survived two of those chemical attacks.
the German Chancellor has been elected by his people. And you accused me of propaganda when many would accuse your government of propaganda day in, day out. So I just ask you again, is your government entering its final days?
No, and have no doubt that any strike on Iran, which is illegal, and obviously you're trying to promote it and to justify it, is illegal. And the Iranian people who've come to the streets yesterday to protest against the Western and Israeli-backed riot, we all know that Pompeo, who was the former head of the CIA, said that Mossad is on the ground with the rioters. We all know that Mossad gave a Persian language statement saying that its people are on the ground in Iran. And when Iran cut off the internet, and I don't have internet either, on Friday night, after Friday, suddenly the riots collapsed. Why? Because it was they were not spontaneous. They were guided and organized from abroad. And when the internet went out, suddenly they went blind. And that's why
the protesters have
it
been
is
given succor
peaceful.
from abroad because they think they have help coming. So I want to ask you, if the US attacks Iran, does Iran hit US targets in the Middle East?
No, those protesters that you were talking about, they left the scene on day 1 and 2. During the first couple of days when there were protesters about the fall in the Iranian rial, which was carried out by the United States, and this is all a part of a broader plan, those protesters on the first couple of days, there was no violence. There were no arrests.
So
There were
if the
no
US
police. There was no
attacks,
police involvement.
if the US
It was
attacks
after
Iran, does Iran
the
strike US
rioters
targets in
entered.
the Middle East?
So after, as I was saying, day 2, when the violent rioters entered and they started destroying ambulances and public buses and banks and clinics and destroying fire engines, that's when the protesters stepped aside and it became riot. And you call those protesters peaceful protesters who murdered 100 police officers and many, many other innocent people.
Can you answer my question about if the US attacks Iran, how does Iran respond? Will it hit US targets in the Middle East?
If the United States attacks Iran, without a doubt, Iran will strike back very hard. And remember what happened during the 12-day war. Go look at the footage from Tel Aviv and other Israeli cities. And as Steve Bannon himself said the day after the war, the real story of the 12-day war was that the Israeli regime during the last 2-3 days was hit so hard that they were seeking a ceasefire.
Well, listen, you guys were obliterated in that war. Israel flew over your skies like nothing, targeted all the regime targets, including the television, right? Press TV that you're working for, one of the channels. Okay? You are a paper tiger. You have no fangs whatsoever. America right now is amassing its troops as it speaks, or not troops, it's airplanes to bomb the hell out of you and make your regime go down in flames. All right? This is all bluff and bluster. Iran has nothing, no credible threat against the West, against Israel, against the United States.
Not Iran.
Well, I mean, that's propaganda in your book, as you describe it. Just
Go and
finally,
look at Steve Bannon's interview. It was broadcast online. It's not mine.
Okay,
Steve Bannon is no cousin of mine.
Just finally, Ayatollah Khamenei, he's an old man. It's been widely reported that he may be looking to go into exile. Would you see that as a defeat?
Well, you're just making stuff up. He's not going anywhere, and your government and the U.S. government, if they get involved in a war with Iran, global economy will go downhill and collapse. And your people will come after you and say, why did you do this to us?
Professor Mohammed Marandi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And understand that lady, she's a far left journalist for a woke far left channel, Channel 4. She was the one who was destroyed by Jordan Peterson in that famous interview. Kathy Freeman, I think her name is. One of the ones who would always, talk about Islamophobia and the genocide in Gaza and all this stuff. Like, that's her ilk. That's where she comes from. And even she can't take this smug regime shill claiming that, the poor Islamic Republic, they just want to go about their lives. But all these foreign countries are intervening and sparking these riots, these violent riots. And the government forces that are being attacked, they had to respond. Okay, give me a break. Give me a break. 45 years, you've oppressed your own people. You haven't allowed them to have any proper elections. You've stolen all of their, hard-earned money in order to fund foreign wars against Israel and, take over Syria and Lebanon and parts of Iraq. And people are willing to give up their lives to try to bring you down. That's what's happening. And we all need to support the people of Iran in their brave fight against this brutality. And if you're looking at the odds right now in these political odds channels where you can bet, like betting on sports, the odds for a US strike are incredibly high at the moment. All right. By the end of the month, it's at over 50%. In the coming days, every day, it's like 10, 8% that the US is going to strike Iran, and a massive strike. They're amassing the weapons. All right. Nobody's scared of you. Okay. It's just a question of how best to give the death knell to this regime and get the political support to do it inside the United States, not to get bogged down with troops on the ground, things like that. They don't want to do that. They just want to hit the targets of the regime so that everyone in the country can see that it's falling, it's crumbling, and that it's going to go away. And maybe the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, will come back and bring Iran into a better future, into a just future. And that's what we're all hoping for.